Prague, a city draped in Gothic charm and medieval mystique. Its cobblestone streets whispered stories of emperors, lovers, revolutions, and some tales that were never meant to be heard at all. In the autumn of 1987, a young man named Lucas Merrick stepped off a train at Prague main station. Only 22, Lucas had left his quiet Slovakian village with nothing but a suitcase, a half-eaten sandwich, and a dream, to become an actor. The city, he believed, held the kind of opportunities that could transform lives. He never imagined that it might also devour them. For 6 long days and nights, Lucas wandered the city with hope slowly decaying in his chest. Every theater he approached turned him away. His savings, already meager, dissolved into coins that barely bought him a roll and a bottle of water. He spent his nights curled up on benches under the amber lights of the train station, dreaming of applause, of roles, of escape. Instead, he woke each morning to rejection. On the 7th night, as cold wind curled around the pillars of the station, Lucas found himself too tired to move. His eyes fluttered, drifting between hunger and despair, when a shadow moved toward him. A man, neatly dressed and oddly composed, stopped before him. "Are you an actor?" the man asked. Lucas blinked. "Trying to be." The man offered a small smile. "Then maybe I've found the right one." His name was Victor Bardis, and he claimed to run a theater not far from the station. They needed a stand-in. A small role. Nothing big, but something to start with. Lucas, caught between gratitude and disbelief, nodded without hesitation. Victor led him away through streets Lucas had never noticed before. Winding alleys. Empty courtyards. Gas lamps that flickered without wind. The city seemed unfamiliar now, like it had reshaped itself to hide this route from the world. Finally, they stopped in front of a narrow, time-worn building. Faded ivy covered the facade. A brass nameplate above the door was caked in soot. Only 2 letters remained legible, B and A. Inside, the theater was dim and freezing. The musty scent of velvet and old wood clung to the air. Lucas saw a group of people, silent, mechanical, their faces blurred in the shadow. No one smiled. No one introduced themselves. They moved with eerie precision, as if repeating a dance they'd long forgotten the meaning of. Victor asked Lucas to observe that night's rehearsal and sit quietly. No one spoke to him. No one acknowledged his presence. Eventually, fatigue overtook him, and Lucas, still seated upright, fell into an unnatural, dreamless sleep. When he awoke, the theater was gone. He was lying on a stone sidewalk near an abandoned courtyard. The sky was pale. A stray dog watched him from a distance. Confused, Lucas retraced his steps. Or tried to. Every alley looked different in the light. Every wall unfamiliar. The building with the faded sign had vanished. That night, Victor returned, just as composed as before, as though nothing had happened. Lucas apologized for having fallen asleep. "No matter," Victor replied. "Tonight, you have a role." This time, Lucas watched the path closely. He remembered a green mural, a crooked bench, a cafe with a single flickering bulb. They arrived once more at the same theater. The brass plate looked no different, only the same 2 letters visible. B. A. Victor handed him a slip of paper with just 3 lines. "Don't worry. I'll always be with you. Wherever you go, I'll follow. Whatever you choose, I'll be behind you." Simple, yet haunting. Before stepping on stage, Lucas decided to smoke a cigarette to calm his nerves. As he flicked the lighter, a sudden shift occurred. The silence inside the theater cracked like glass. The moment the flame hissed to life, every person in the theater turned toward him, wide-eyed, stiff, unnatural. Then chaos erupted. People began running, screaming, banging into walls that hadn't been there a moment before. Lucas saw more than the dozen people he remembered. There were now dozens, perhaps more. Some floated, some ran without touching the ground. Shadows spun wildly across the seats, and the stage itself trembled like something beneath it was waking up. Before Lucas could react, something unseen hurled him backwards. His head struck something hard. Then, darkness. He woke in a hospital. Dizzy. Bandaged. A nurse told him he had been found unconscious and bleeding by strangers who brought him in but left without a name. He asked for the address they had given. The nurse hesitated, but eventually told him. When he visited the location, it was just a residential district. Calm. Normal. Nothing like the eerie place he remembered. Lucas asked around. Shopkeepers, residents, even an old fruit seller. No one had ever heard of a theater nearby. As he sat at a street-side cafe, head in hands, a hunched old man approached him. "You're looking for something, aren't you?" he asked. Lucas explained, carefully, cautiously. The man listened silently, then nodded. "Come with me." He led Lucas down a quiet lane, past rusted gates and vacant plots, to a broken structure overtaken by vines and silence. "This," he said, "used to be the Bavlna Theater. Burned down in '79. Everyone inside, actors, directors, stagehands, perished. Fire started during a midnight rehearsal. No survivors. B.A. Bavlna." Lucas felt the blood drain from his face. The name matched. The feeling matched. He had been there. The old man, seeing his horror, took him to a local historian named Stefan Bardis, who specialized in Prague's lost landmarks. Lucas, still shaken, told him everything. When he mentioned Victor, Stefan froze. Slowly, he pulled out a faded black and white photo from a folder. "That's Victor," Lucas whispered. Stefan nodded. "My brother. He died in the fire." Silence fell. "He loved that theater more than anything," Stefan said softly. "Even in death, I suppose, he never left." Lucas fell to his knees. The theater, the people, the lines, all real. All cursed. Had he spoken those 3 lines, accepted his role on that stage, would he ever have returned? Stefan gave him money and directions back to the station. "Leave," he said. "And don't come back." Lucas didn't argue. That night, he boarded the earliest train back to Slovakia. He never spoke of acting again. The theater dream died that week, burned into ash with the memories of those who never left. But even years later, in quiet moments, Lucas would remember that theater. He'd hear voices whispering in an empty room. Or find himself mouthing those same 3 lines in the middle of the night. He never lit a cigarette again.